opening. Almost there. Okay, very good. Well, welcome, welcome.
Thank
I
you.
am going to make you host. All right, Chris.
So now I do have a couple of questions before we begin. Most of our audience is in the YouTube part of the stream. Will they be able to respond in the chat during the live, and will you be
They
able to
can.
read those?
They
They
can.
can't, and you can see them? Okay,
Yes, I'll
awesome.
take a look at those. If you want, you can as well, but then you'd have to mute, and I have a separate screen, a separate device for doing all that.
Oh no, if you can just alert me if there's questions or anything like that,
I
then
will.
we will go ahead and get started. All right, so let
Perfect.
me start just by sharing my screen right here. And just a quick introduction. My name is Chris Copeland. I'm a writing coach with Speak Your Own Book. And today I'm speaking to you today about how to publish a book without writing a single word. I know that sounds crazy, but I will show you how to do it in 90 minutes or less today. We do have a lot of information packed into this. So I will be kind of going through it at a very fast pace, but luckily you'll be able to watch the replay and slow it down if you need to. But this is normally a 2-hour class, and I've just jam-packed it down into 90 minutes. So let's jump into it. A little bit about me. My name is Chris Copeland, and again, you can find me on Gmail at this address. I'm a Texas expat, but I'm a traveler, so I've been to all of the country flags that you see listed. And I currently live in the Netherlands. Up next, I'll be headed to France, and then that will be next month. And in January, I'll head to Kenya. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the writing and the writing coach thing that I do. That's part of what I do. My other jobs are I'm an online English teacher. I teach anywhere from children as young as 2 years old all the way to adults in advanced business English. And I'm also a social entrepreneur. I help Rhiannon Farms. I'm one of the investors and the founding members. It's a social entrepreneurship based in Kenya to help create food sustainability and small scale farms for local people in Nairobi and the surrounding regions. And a little bit about Speak Your Own Book. Of course, it is a social entrepreneurship as well. I love social entrepreneurship. It's about not just making money, but also solving some problems in the world. So we are women owned and operated. 75% of our founding members are people of color from Africa. It's particularly from Kenya. And we are a fair trade company. So all of our pricing is open. You know exactly what your end user or your end writers are making and your editors are making, your transcribers are making. That's also part of our team. We have writers, writing coaches, project managers, transcribers, editors, and graphic designers to help with book covers as well. You can find us on social media at Speak Your Own Book. Our website is speakyourownbook.com, and you can always email our general email box at help@speakyourownbook.com. So let's jump into this with who can write a book. Just like with cooking on Ratatouille, anyone can write a book. Now, that doesn't mean that we will always help publish books. There are a few types of books that we won't publish, particularly ones that break the Wiccan read. So this involves any isms. If it involves sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, we won't publish it. So as we say that anyone can write a book, but if they follow those beliefs, it won't be in our interest to help them write the book. Other than that, we're happy to help with any book to get published, and we've done that about 19 times the past year. So let's talk about our objectives for today. By the end of this workshop, you will understand the speak writing process. You'll brainstorm topics for your own first book, or hopefully your next book if you're already a published writer. You'll outline your book today. I'll assist with outlining your book, and then you will be able to continue that on your own with these instructions. And then you'll be able to use the speak writing process to write your book without writing any actual words. Then you will learn how to transcribe your speak writing sessions. We'll go through a few tips on how to do that. You'll understand the revision, editing, and proofreading process. That's 3 different steps that we go through at Speak Your Own Book that we recommend you do so that you can polish your book off and get it ready for publishing. We'll also give you some advice today on a method to publish your book, as well as some tips on how to market and sell your book. So let's start with some equipment and resources that you need. For speak writing, you'll need an audio and or video recording app. I love using Zoom. It's what we use for the majority of our speak writing sessions. You can record everything. If you have a Zoom membership, it saves to the cloud for you. Otherwise, you can save it on your local computer. Also, you'll need a decent headset and mic. Now, if you don't have a separate mic, a lot of times your built-in mic on your phone or one of these will work. Or you can even, just use your phone as well if that's all you have access to. It won't be the greatest of audio, but you can still work with it. Also, have a Google Drive folder available so that you can save all of your writing materials there for ease of access. And we recommend working in Google Docs over MS Word, just so you have access to that anywhere in the world from any device in the world. Now, let's talk a little bit about housekeeping notes. There's not a whole lot of participants in our Zoom chat. There's a lot more on this, so the first one is not applicable to today's session. But if you do have any questions, go ahead and type those into the YouTube chat, and Lawrence will be happy to send them over to me, and I will respond to them as we go through. Now, if you have witchlings or familiars that want in the room, they are welcome to join and sit in on this conversation as well. It will be kid appropriate. Now, let's talk about our workshop format today. We'll spend this 5 minutes going over our warm-up and greetings and all of that. Then right now we're going to jump into our speak writing process. At the end, we'll have a little bit of a group discussion. Hopefully you'll be able to respond in the chat to that. Otherwise, I will just share my thoughts as much as I can. And then we'll have a final Q&A and closing at the end where you are free to ask all of your questions about any difficulties or obstacles that you are facing with your own book. So let's jump right in with this question. What is writing? Writing is the silent, energy-consuming effort with someone's brain to produce visual language for others to also consume silently. So writing is very much an internal process. It's not something that is done out loud, which means it's more difficult, especially difficult to get help with because all of it's thinking up here and not necessarily talking and communicating as we normally do. So let's talk about what's in good writing. Good writing should sound exactly like you speak. That's your author's voice. You want people to read your book and hear your voice in their head. And hopefully you'll be on social media and active and participating with your readership so that they will know your voice familiarly as well. We'll talk more about that in the marketing portion. But good writing is also just storytelling put to paper. If you can say it out loud and it's a good story, well, then it's a good story on paper too. Now, that gets us to the point of before there were scribes. Before we had people writing things down for us, there were storytellers. We are naturally storytellers as human beings. We've been telling stories since the beginning of time, long before we had writing. So when we started developing scribes and learning to write, though, that became a skill. The scribe learned a skill, writing, and they applied their trade to that writing. Now, so this would involve things like word formation, sentence structure, all of these more abstract concepts that are not necessarily part of storytelling. Now, a storyteller simply tells a story, though. All you have to do is say it out loud. All of us are storytellers. We tell stories to our friends. We tell stories to our family. We share, if we have students, we'll share information with them, whether it's in a coven setting or a more secular education setting. But when we tell stories, people tend to listen to those stories, and then they can take that information and apply it to their life. But you can do that same method with writing a book. Humans have been telling stories long before we were writing them, so we all know how to do this. So instead of writing your story, let's learn to speak your story. So let's talk about what is speak writing. Speak writing is a term that we coined here at Speak Your Own Book, but it's been done for millennia. It involves the concept of planning a story, then telling that story, and then with new modern technology, of course, we're recording the storytelling. In ancient times, a scribe sat and wrote down whatever the speaker was saying, whether it was a king or whether it was a wise old sage or whoever was speaking that was telling that story, someone was sitting there writing it down. Well, now we have technology that can assist with that. And then we transcribe that story so that it's in written form. This is also part of what the scribe would do. And now we're going to take that transcript that we've received from our sessions of speak writing, and we'll edit it for clarity, transition, and word, or revise it for clarity, transition, and word choice. Next, we're going to edit it. This involves using correct tense, punctuation, spelling. And then we'll proofread it. This is when we go back over the full document, and we're going to look for overall conformity and appearance. Now, next we will create our cover for publishing. This is where I recommend you actually reach out to a professional to get a graphic designer to help with that. We'll talk a little bit more about why later on. Now, finally, we'll talk about marketing and selling your book to your readership, as well as growing your readership too. Now, let's talk about what a story is. A story can be any genre, either fiction or nonfiction. So in fiction, we have several different kinds: fantasy, sci-fi, realistic fiction, fables, folktales. In historical fiction are a few examples. Now, we mostly focus on Speak Your Own Book on nonfiction. However, we have done fiction stories. We do have additional advice for fiction, but since the majority of our pagan writers are looking to write nonfiction informational books, I felt that it might be best for this audience to focus on nonfiction. If you are interested in writing a fictional story with us, I recommend checking out speakyourownbook.com. We offer free consultations. We'll be happy to schedule one with you and talk with you about your next steps with your fiction project. Now, with nonfiction, we have, of course, informational, the most common type with education and things like that. Now, with that, we also have biographies, if you're telling the story of another person's life, or autobiographies, if you're sharing your own. If you're sharing a piece of your life, that would be called a memoir. And we also have philosophy, spirituality, self-help. Normally, this is kind of where you find most of the Wiccan and pagan books. So that would kind of be the genre we focus on the most at Speak Your Own Book. And of course, educational materials. And now this can be tied into all of these other things. You can have educational materials with information, with biography, with philosophy, spirituality, self-help, if you're using it in an educational format. I'll show you an example of that later on. Now, let's talk about choosing your topic for nonfiction books. Now, in order to do this for a longer session, if you want to, you can take a look at our free 50 question guide. This is available at speakyourownbook.com/free 50 question guide. So you can go there and grab that today. Now, I'm going to pull the first 3 questions from the guide so that we can talk about our topic today. The first question is, what topics interest or excite you? The second is, what can you speak about or have you spoken about already with passion for 5 or I'm sorry, I've got to move my screen here, 5 or more hours. And the third final question that we want to talk about with topic is, what answers from question 1 and question 2 overlap? Where do we find that middle ground? So let's choose a topic together today. Hopefully we can get some interaction in the chat as well. So let's talk about topics or interests that might excite you. Could be introductory Wicca, could be tarot, and I've broken down here. You could have a big overall kind of book about introductory something or other, or you could break it down into levels like beginner tarot, intermediate tarot, advanced tarot. Now, you could also talk about a bunch of different kind of niche specialties within Wicca, working with crystals, herbs, chakra work. You could have a full book about all of these kind of mixed in together, like an eclectic set of information, or you could really take a deep dive in on one of them, like crystals that can be used for meditation purposes, or crystals that are used for chakra work. Now, you could also talk about the internet and how we use the internet in Wicca, whether it's through technomancy or interacting with social media or building your own pagan following online. All of those could be topics for books as well. You could talk about mythology. And of course, we've got mythology from all over the world. So you could take a deep dive in on that and share stories from it. You could talk about meditation if you have a lot of experience with that. One thing I like to do is combine two topics to create a special niche topic like mythology and meditation. Combine those two topics and you could have a lot of really good, interesting material. So now let's talk about you. Do we have any, Lawrence, do we have any ideas in the chat from people who are currently interested or excited about something going on that they would love to share with the world?
One of the questions that comes up so often is, do I have to be an expert? And can I just talk about my journey, as a memoir, as you were saying, about my pagan journey? And then I'll share one for myself, but I would love to hear for this other person.
Absolutely. That's a great topic to have. You can share your own personal journey with paganism. In fact, we're helping Lori Blackman write a book with that right now about her experience as a pagan media correspondent for the Corellian tradition. And that's been a very exciting book to work on and pulling out those stories about her personal life and her experience with meeting famous pagans from around America has been very interesting as well. So yes, absolutely share your life story. Everyone has their own unique story to tell, whether you're someone living in India or someone living in China or Africa or America or Europe where I'm at. Everyone has a very unique and interesting story to tell. And I think that story should be told. It should be part of the human collective knowledge. So yeah, that's a great idea. Definitely go for your own story. Absolutely. You know your own story best. All
Frith
right.
has
And
asked about writing an autobiography.
absolutely, autobiographies are really interesting because you're not going to find that information anywhere else, right? You're the expert on your own life, so write about what you know about. And yes, if you're comfortable with writing your life story and you're ready to get it out there and share it with people, definitely do that. So excellent question there. So let's talk about a topic that we could do a little bit more broadly, maybe for this one. Keep thinking about that so that we can have an example of it. If not, then what we will do, since I believe I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is it Frith? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Awesome. All right. So if we since you are in the chat today, if we don't have a lot of other suggestions about one big topic that would affect everyone, then we'll probably pull that for our example for today. So let's talk about the other question. What can you speak about for 5 hours? This is going to play back to Lawrence's question about what if I'm not an expert in anything but my own life. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you have a lot of knowledge on introductory Wicca, even if that's all you know about is just the basics of Wicca, that's a great story to tell along with your own experience with it, because there's a ton of books out there about introductory Wicca. You have to figure out how to make yours unique. Again, it's right back to the tarot. You could do all of these same types of conversations about things you know, but the important question is for you to name a topic. So go ahead and type in the chat, is there a topic that you could talk about for at least 5 hours? Maybe not in a row. Normally our sessions are 30 minutes to an hour long each time, but over the course of a few weeks, we gain enough recordings to make a book. So any suggestions in the chat, Lawrence?
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't get one. I will say I've got actually two. One is, a personal journey for myself is coming out as a pagan and a witch in the business world, which has been kind of an interesting thing, having worked, not in some non-traditional technology and larger organizations and doing a lot of work in local government. And then there's a question about a book on invocation, which is a really interesting topic. Some people call it drawing down the moon. And there is a very wide swath of beliefs, and there are certain faith systems that see it as quite problematic and evil. and many others see it as a natural part of their faith and religious tradition. So there's quite a bit there to talk about, as well as, excuse me, techniques and personal experiences and interviews with others.
So let me take that in two separate parts here. Let's go first to yours. I think that would be an incredibly interesting and helpful story because obviously you're one of probably thousands of pagans that are working in the business world, just in probably the West Coast alone. So knowing that the fact that you have a story that could resonate with so many other people who may still be struggling to come out of the broom closet, that could really help them to really take that push they need to have the confidence they need, or even just recognize whether it's safe enough in their own environment. So there's definitely a wealth of information that could be pulled from that. That would be really exciting to dive into. So I hope that you will continue with that project. I think it would make a great book. For the other one on invocation and drawing down the moon, I think that would be a great topic to start with today, because I've never actually worked on a book about specifically drawing down the moon. So that would definitely be something I would be interested in taking a look at and tackling. So let's try that today. And now when you're trying to figure out your own at home, you want to use this kind of Venn diagram, right? You'll put what you like in one circle and what you know in another circle, and anything that overlaps in the middle, that's your sweet spot. Those are the things you can write about. Obviously, if you like yourself and you know yourself, that's a perfect one to put in the middle. And I hope everyone has me in big bold letters right in the middle. You should definitely tell your life story. All right, so let's talk about this other question that Lawrence had. What if you're not an expert in anything yet? Well, my cat friend has some advice for you. Learn. Go out there and dig into that information. Find out more. Study. Grow. And then as soon as you gain that information, start feeding it back to people. Go out and talk to them about it. Tell them what you've learned. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your kids. Talk to your mother. Talk to your father. If you are open with them, then obviously do that. But yeah, find someone to talk to about the things you learn. It not only helps you to start communicating and speaking your book before you actually speak your book, but it also reinforces that knowledge you just learned, and it helps you retain it longer. I'm saying that from my teacher hat here. Yes, we have a three-step system in teaching. You watch, you do, you teach. So you've watched or read someone or watched a video, learned what to do, go out and practice that, and then teach it to other people. And then you're ready to write your book. All right. Now, of course, when you're writing your story, the best advice I can give you for finding that author's voice is to be unique, be weird, be you. Unless you can be a unicorn, then be a unicorn. But in all seriousness, you want to put in your opinions, your insights, your anecdotes, your experiences. Tell your story through your topic. Even if your topic is not me, it's not my autobiography, it may be crystal work or candle magic. Tell your stories about that. Tell your experience about that. Share your insights, your opinions, all of those things. Now, let's talk about narrowing it down. You've got that middle list, that chunk from the middle of the circle there. You're going to review that list, and you're going to pick the one you know the most about or you have the most interest in speaking about. And that's it. That's how you decide on a topic. Now, let's go on into brainstorming. We've got our topic in mind. Today, we'll use invocation as our topic for practice. But at home, if you're doing this on your own, you can start working with your own topic as we go. Let me teach you a little bit about mind mapping. This is a great skill to do. I've taught it to kids as young as 5 years old, all the way to adults who are professional writers. Think about the topic and decide whether you are going to write about a broad overview of that subject or a small portion of the subject, a very particular niche part of it. And then you're going to jot down or speak and record. If you don't even want to write this, you don't even have to do that. Speak and record 10 to 50 sentences, phrases, or subtopics about your topic. Now, don't worry about the order right now. We're just throwing everything out there. There's no wrong answers yet. When we go to a little bit of the narrowing down and outlining, we can pull out the material we can't use, or we can add in other things that we forgot. So let's talk about this phrasal metacognition for a little bit. This is thinking about thinking. And when you're thinking about your book, you also need to think about what questions would need to be answered in that, what your reader is going to be thinking while they read the book. Put yourself in their place and think what they think. And examine your own thinking. Are you confused about the things you're talking about? Do you need to add more information? What is missing from the brainstorming that you've been doing? Now, also, when you're talking about metacognition, it helps to work with these sentences. I'm thinking, I'm noticing, I'm wondering, I'm seeing, I'm feeling. That will help you kind of start planning out what important information you need to include with this. Now, here's a mind map example. This is a template that you can use. You'll have your big topic in the middle, and if it's me, put me. Right? If it's your book is about you, put your name in the middle and then start putting some subtopics. What else do you want to talk about around that? What important aspects or situations in your life? And then you'll add some details to that as you go. What other information needs to be included to fully flesh out that subtopic? These aren't going to be complete sentences even that you're writing. They're just going to be a few words or phrases. So let's practice mind mapping here. And I'm going to need our expert in the YouTube chat to help out with this. This place is called mindmup.com. And when you go to it, you can click on the thing that says create your free mind map. And it will open up this screen. Now you can register for an account and save it. I usually just screenshot it and use it as my kind of rough draft for the outline step that comes later. So we're going to put in the middle here, invocation / drawing down the moon. So quickly in the chat, if you can just kind of throw out all of these things that go around invocation. We talked about, I remember hearing we had positive and negative. So let's add, we might have positive views, and then another one might be negative views. What's some more? Lawrence, you can go ahead and toss those over to me as you get them. Different traditions, purpose, risks. Okay, so let's add that. You just click over here on sibling mode. Oh, not that one. Let's trash that one and grab that one. And different traditions. And I can correct the letter on that. Yep. Purpose. So we'll add in purpose, risks, ecstatic worship, altered and enhanced perspective. It's a good one. And gender of practitioner, there's another one. Closeness to deity, great one. Right, we have a lot of great ones here for this topic. So now you can continue on with this, adding more and more things if you want to, but we've got a good base here to kind of go in with our example today. So we'll just start with this. Now let's go back to our screen over here. We've got our mind map. Let's say we finish filling it out. We get it all complete. Everything that we can think of, we're throwing on there. Now it's time to do a session 0 for outlining your book. So what is a session 0? A session 0 is where you sit down and you can record this as well. You don't have to write this out. You can write it out after you get all your thoughts recorded or transcribe it out. And you're going to start outlining your book. This will be starting to put things in the order you want to see them in, what makes the most sense. So here's a few tips for that. First, create 2 to 10 groups of ideas for your subtopics in a way that makes sense to the topic. I recommend at least 2, so you could have 2 halves to your book or 2 parts. But 10 or more is actually even better, because each one could also be a chapter too. You could put the subtopics as the chapters, or the subtopics as the chapters, but you want to get enough different groups of information to kind of make an entire book. We recommend at least 10 chapters a book, but I've seen some as short as 7 that just had really thick content-filled chapters that were really good too. Now, if there's a chronological order to your topic, such as if you're writing someone's life story, like your own, a personal memoir, then you can put that in chronological order. But it's not necessarily the only way to do a story that has time involved in it. If you're telling personal stories, you might want to frame them a different way. It might be by life roles, what your experience was being a parent, being a friend to people, a spouse, partner, career, all of those different aspects of life that you may have knowledge on from the pagan perspective or just from your own personal perspective. And you could also sort them by lessons learned. I've seen this done really well, where it was just the topic of each chapter was what they learned from that experience, whether it was honesty or kindness or resourcefulness. Those are great things to do. You can organize them by chakras if there's a certain pagan thing that you want to add to it as well. We've done a couple of different books where we had chakras as the theme for the outline. And I see another one in here, how it changes lifestyle. So we'll jump in and add that to our map too, real quickly. How invocation changes lifestyle. And now let's talk about an example outline. Here we see one that shows finding the true self. And this person had, it was longer than this, but these were the first 5 chapters plus the introduction. Very simple. It's the title of whatever they want to say, plus a few short, not even complete sentences. So the first one, what is the true self? They want to put the definition in there. They want to put the downside of it and the upside. They want to put short and long-term costs. And they want to have a working definition of happiness, their personal definition of happiness. So that this is one way to do it. However, if you're more hands-on and you like to physically hold things, you can also just pull out a notebook or a sheet of paper, get creative with markers. This one's from a teacher who is writing a book about, so it starts out with Bloom's taxonomy, which is, so Bloom's taxonomy is like what I did with the objectives at the beginning, the things you will learn to do. That comes from Bloom's taxonomy, and there's levels all the way from basic knowledge to evaluation and judgments and creating your own things. All right, so let's talk about this book. This is called The Myths of Human Resources, and it has only 7 chapters in it. This one had specific myths they wanted to talk about in each chapter, and they're giving some examples of it in the chapters, some personal anecdotes. So this is another way to do it. Now, here's an outline template. This is a very basic one that you can do for yours. You've got your first major point. You'll have some minor points and stories and examples under each of those. And you might want to set it up very, very structured where it flows in the same pattern, especially if you're doing this for a class or something that you want to teach later on. That's a great thing to do, is keep it uniform so that the student or the reader knows what to expect and knows that rhythm to the class. Now let's talk about outlines here. This is a free book outline template that's included in the slide deck here. And so hopefully I can figure out how to make that available to you after this. If you have trouble getting it, then just email me. I'm happy to share the slide deck with you so that you have all of these resources. But here we see a blank one. And we're going to just scroll down to the bottom. There are lots of extra questions that you can use to help outline your story here, but we're really focused on this table of contents down here. where we're going to kind of outline our book. So if we go back and take a look at our mind map, and I know we had another one in the chat, new diet and interests. So I'm hoping these are, because some of these I don't understand exactly how they're related yet to invocation and drawing down the moon. So new diet and interests. So if this has something to do with invocation, then we can add that to here. Interests. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. If we're taking a look at this, our expert in the chat on invocation, what do you think is most important to talk about first? I can make a guess in a few seconds, but I just want to see what your thoughts are as the expert. My guess would be the purpose, because that's normally how we structure with lessons too. We put our purpose, our reason for having the course at the beginning. I'm assuming it's the same with this. Let's check the chat and see if that's right. Yes. Okay. All right. So purpose would be a great one to start with. Now, I did see another suggestion here that might be the relationship or the closeness to deity could also be the first chapter. Either one of those I think could make a great first chapter. There's not necessarily one only way to do this, right? If you feel that it's more important to focus on closeness to deity before we jump into the purpose, do it that way. For the time being, just for kind of my understanding as I'm writing this, and just for ease, we're going to talk about the purpose of invocation. Now, you'll want to do that with each of them to start outlining out where you think it would be best to talk about those. But underneath that, you want to give a one-sentence key takeaway or a few things that you want to mention about the purpose of invocation. So give me a few purposes of invocation that should be included with this. What is the purpose of invocation? Are there multiple ones? So let's talk about that for a little bit. I'm assuming that oh yeah, worship closer. That's the first one I was going to guess. The purpose is getting closer to deity is the one purpose, which could really tie into, like, if you're doing the next chapter on the relationship of deity, you could take a big deeper dive into that. Self-transformation, let's see, veneration. So let's see. So it's all about self-transformation, veneration. These are important things to mention. Very good. And versus group events. So this is if you're practicing drawing down the moon alone, you might have a self-transformation. You might have I guess we would call it a group transformation. Maybe that would be a good term for it. Let's see. Goal-specific empowerment. Very good. So these are all great things to include here. Now, I think that's good for now. Obviously, you may have more information, but just for time's sake, let's stop with this amount so that we can jump into the rest of it here. Basically, your idea is to go through that for every single chapter that you'll outline and just put in a few keywords that you need to talk about. I think I left empowerment out. There we go. Goal-specific empowerment. There. Now, notice that we're talking about this and then we're writing it. So technically right now, my author that I'm listening to is this person in the chat. I'm not sure what your name is, but thank you so much for participating with this and jumping in with all these great ideas. And basically, we're taking that outline now, and you're having a scribe, me, write it out for you. So you're not doing the writing yourself. You're coming up with these ideas. Obviously, you're typing them in the chat too, but for the purposes of structuring them for writing, you're using a scribe at this point. If you're doing this completely on your own, then you can be your own scribe, and we'll talk about how to do that too. So let's go back to our writing today, and we're going to jump into the speak writing part of it. Now, hopefully, you can type a little bit about this. Let me go ahead and give our author in the chat some instructions here. I want you to kind of speak out loud while you're listening to these other things. Speak out loud some important things that are about that first purpose. So let's take a look at our outline here. What does it mean to get closer to deity? Give me a couple of minutes of talk about that, what it means to you. And then if you can, type in a few phrases about that and we'll expand on that. Now, I'm going to jump into talking about speakwriters. Now, speakwriters is a term that Speak Your Own Book coined, but it's not an original concept. We didn't create the concept of speakwriting. We just changed the name slightly. It's really storytellers, and these are the storytellers of old. Now, these people on the right did not write any of their own stories down. They shared this information with people who listened to them, and then at some point someone wrote it down. Maybe not even their students or the people listening, but it might have been 2 or 3 generations later, or even hundreds of years later. But Plato, Homer, now the Norse sagas is very interesting because sagas literally mean sayers. So it's not just talking about the story, but it's talking about the people who tell the story, the sayers. So right there, speakers is right in that concept. Aesop and his fables, source material from the Stragaria, and virtually all creation story authors are speakwriters. Now, this isn't just something from the past, though. We have lots of modern day speakwriters as well. Louis Lamour was famous for this. He would pop out a book a month on Westerns. The way he did that was through speakwriting. He would dictate his story into a recorder, send that off to a transcriber, and the transcriber would send him back a rough transcript. And that's how he worked. Same thing with Agatha Christie, Winston Churchill, John Milton, and I'm going to butcher this Russian name, Dostoevsky, I believe is how it's pronounced. Dumas, Voltaire, Dan Brown, Henry James, Sidney Sheldon, so on. You'll notice it's the 3 down at the bottom are some of our personal writers. Don Lewis, Raven Wolf Greenfield, and Laurie Blackman all have used the speak writing method to publish books. Or working on in some cases working on it still. All right, now let's talk about preparing for session 1. These are things that you can do to get ready for speak writing. First, review that outline. Make additional notes of key phrases and vocabulary you want to mention. So if we take a look at our book outline currently, we have some key phrases that we'll want to mention: veneration, self-transformation, group transformation, empowerment, goal-specific empowerment. Those are terms that we might want to define as we're talking about them. Think of questions that your reader would like you to answer. What are they going to want to know? And in this case, what are they going to want to know about the purposes of invocation? Now, I include this rule, the 5W1H rule. It's from journalism classes that I took long ago, but it's applicable to most writing. You want to always include who, what, where, when, how, and why when you're writing information. Now, it may not be important to include all of this. The reader may know some already, or some may not be applicable. But when, with this one, we can say who, which it's either by ourselves or in a group when we're talking about invocation. What are we doing? We are invoking. We are drawing down the moon. When are we doing it? Well, usually during a full moon. Where are we doing it? Usually outside during that full moon, or with a group of people, or by ourselves at our altar. But you could talk about all those different places. Why are we doing it? Well, that's the whole question of chapter 1, the purposes of it. And then how are we doing it? You may not get into the how just yet. These may be questions that you answer later on. But keep them in mind if you're telling a story that's related to it. You'll want to include all that information as well, all those details. Also, check your recording equipment and your internet connection. You want everything to be stable and ready to go when you're ready to start speak writing. Now, let's talk about some tips for session 1. Before you dig into speak writing your first chapter, take a few minutes to visualize your book in your head. How do you want it to look on the page? What are some of your ideas for the cover art? When you picture yourself holding your book and flipping through the pages, what does that look like to you? Picture it in your head. Consider spacing, font sizes, font types, layout, and then speak those notes out loud before you start the session. This will help you when you're setting up your manuscript. So start talking about when you first record. I want it to have this font. I want it to be this big on the page, and kind of give some thoughts on measurements, and all of those different things you'll want for your book. Feel free to stop, back up, make notes to use different words, or change the way you say things as you go. When you're speak writing, you can also kind of speak edit as you go. No, I didn't like how that sounds. Let's back it up and retry that again. I'm going to phrase it this way instead. And if it sounds good out loud, it'll probably sound good on paper. So as you're speaking it, listen for, does this sound good? Now, I say good on paper, but that's going to be after proper revision. We'll talk more about that after this section. Now, if you're unsure that this is good writing as you're speaking it, repeat it out loud a few times so you can test the word choice. Change the words around, see if that order fits better. But try it a few different times until you get it right. Now, let's talk about some recording tips. This will make your sound quality better. And if you're hiring a transcriber to do your recording for you, they will love you if you do these things. I've been a professional transcriber as well. While I have a team that does that for me now, when I did it professionally, I loved it when people kind of prepared for the recording so that it made it easier for the transcriber. So record in a quiet room with some furniture and wall decor to prevent echo. Use a decent recording device. Now, your smartphone most likely will be able to handle it. They're pretty good these days. I've done it with smartphone microphones and it worked just fine. Record in Zoom. Zoom is a great tool for doing that. You can use Skype and other tools too. I just always recommend Zoom because there's no charge for the first 40 minutes of sessions. And when we were first getting started as a company, we just used the free account and just would reboot the session every time we needed to close it. Now we have a full out professional account, but back then when we're getting started, we're going to be very careful with how we spend our money. And of course, if you have witchlings and familiars, keep them out of the room during the recording. If they need to come in, then pause your recording and go handle that, and then come back and work on your writing again. That just keeps the sound quality clear, and it also keeps from there being a lot of dead space or space where there's kids in the background talking and things like that. And have a friend help you stay on track by interviewing with you. If you have someone that's willing to jump in and help you on this journey, then have them sit there with your outline and ask you the questions that you need to talk about. You can either leave out their questions or use their questions that they ask as your section titles. Now, let's talk about things that you need to include when you're speak writing. You'll want to put your objectives. What are you trying to convey? What are you trying to get the student or the reader to understand? Include that key vocabulary along with the definitions. And here's one thing that when I first started learning Wicca, I really wish there had been more of in books. I was a very young teenager, and pronunciation of some of our terms can be very difficult, especially my original home was Texas, and we say things a little strangely in Texas. So when I was reading Athame as a child, I read it as a thame and said it like that for probably the next 5 or 6 years before someone corrected me. So make sure you have your pronunciation guide in there. It really keeps your readers from embarrassing themselves later on. Also, tarot is a great one to include as well. Now, looking at these pronunciation, here's a tip. Don't use the fancy symbols that are in the dictionary with the upside down letters, the lines, the happy faces, and all of that around them. Just use plain, simple English when you're doing it. Athame, tarot. Make sure it's spread out like that and capitalize the strong part on it. All right, so here's some more important, also with this, you want to include important points to note in the writing. If someone needs to pay attention to something, then make sure that that's an important point that you include when you're speaking. And then of course, funny, dramatic, and generally engaging anecdotes to emphasize your important points really help draw that reader in. So focus on your stories. And any safety precautions that need to come with it. This could be, especially with candle magic and herb magic, really emphasize that safety magic, put it in put safety precautions, put it in a separate text box, highlight it, bold it, make it very visible to your readers when you're actually formatting it for the manuscript. Now, let's talk about organizing your thoughts for the reader. There's lots of different ways that we can do this as you're writing your story. While speak writing your story. Note when it would be a good place to visually explain this concept. Is it better to use bullet points on this part? Should you use numbers or dashes? Text boxes are great for this. You can put vocabulary in there, helpful tips, safety info, all of that. If you want to emphasize certain words, you can use bold, underline, italics, or all caps. But make sure that whatever you use for one type of word, say it's a vocabulary word and you want it bold, make sure all the vocabulary words are bold. Don't put some in italics, don't underline others. Make them all one way so that your student knows to look for those important words. Also charts, if you plan to include a chart here, make a note while you're talking. I need a chart right here on chapter 1 about this issue. If you have artwork that you plan to include, like this one from our Dreamer's Journey Tarot book, we did this one with Monica Crossan, and this was recently published. You can find it at our bookstore, speakyourownbook.com/SYOB bookstore. But if you want to include artwork, you can note in there where you want to include it. We had notes in ours that we wanted to put the cards in the back, and we wanted to put the coloring pages in with the chapter itself. Each chapter is kind of like a little moral story or an ethical story or bedtime story. Now it's designed for children, but it's also great for the inner child if you're an adult who just loves to color like me. All right, and you can also talk about what photographs to include here. This one is of our beautiful author, Monica Crossan, who wrote the majority of the stories in The Dreamer's Journey. And so if you have a particular photo that you want to include with a chapter or on the back of your book, toss that in there too, or mention it as you're speak writing. So we're going to talk about speak writing in just a minute, but I want to give you a few examples before you begin speak writing. Here's one from RG, Reverend Ravenwolf Greenfield. He's the author of Medium 365, and you can find his book at medium365.club. RG is a very interesting character because he basically just wrote a few quick notes down about what he wanted to do with each lesson, and then bam, he just like rolls into it. If you've seen his podcasts online or his vlogs online, he does these daily, so he's kind of got this whole speak writing thing down. So let's take a listen to how he does this. All right, so just a quick note here. I wanted to point out a few great things that RG did. He has his notepad next to him. Right before this, he sets a timer and he knows exactly how much time he wants to spend talking on each topic. He knows that if he talks for 2 minutes on the lesson itself and 1 minute on an exercise to go with that lesson, it adds up to roughly 1 page of usable, good quality text. And he wants 1 page per lesson for this 365 plus 1 bonus one for the leap year's lesson textbook for his course. That's a great system to do. Start timing yourself. And now he's rolling out this book in literally under 2 months, a 365-page book. Phenomenal work on it. So make sure you keep an eye out for that book too. But this is one way to do it. Now let's go on to another one here. You might recognize this handsome young fellow too, Reverend Don Lewis, from about 10 years ago. He took his vlogs. Many of you know he does daily vlogs and has done them for a decade now. And he wanted to really sort that material out to make it into more of a usable kind of database of content, a collective knowledge of content that people could sort through and find advice on when they needed it. So he's created a book of 100 questions, and he has 4 volumes so far. There might be a 5th one in the future. Volume 1 is available already, and you can get that from Amazon.com. But basically, let me just kind of show you what he does in case you haven't seen his vlogs.
Chris, there's no sound.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, let me get the sound. Okay. I know how to do that here. Yeah, I gotta change the share. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. I forgot to click the share with sound button. Now you should be able to hear it, so let's try this again.
Coming to you from beautiful Salem. And tonight I wanted to revisit a subject that we discussed in one of our recent vlogs, and that is the animal die-offs that have accompanied the coming of the calendrical new year.
Okay, so just to take a look,
and there have been many
let me
theories.
stop that there. Just to take a look at this, and I will go back and show you a little bit of RG's because I just found out that you couldn't hear it. So we'll go back and look at that one. But he starts out by talking about his topic. This has to do with omens and the calendrical new year. He very clearly states his purpose at the beginning, and then he starts going into more details about it. We took that information. He had already written his book in another form. So if you have vlogs available, if you've already done lots of podcasts, well, there's your book right there. You can pull that information and use it. But very quickly, let's go back and I'll have you listen to RG one more time just for a little bit.
The Four of Pentacles. The Four of Pentacles is a very possessive card. And really, one of the lessons that needs to be taught with this card is be wary with materialism. As mediums, we know that when we cross into the veil or cross into eternity, we don't take anything with us.
All right, so again, that was an example from his book that will be released in October. So again, if you want to look at that, it's at medium365.club. Now, let's go on to this one, and we'll take a look at what Lori is doing with her book. Now, the reason I wanted to pull Lori's in here because this is an example of what having a friend in the room while you record can do for you. So in this group session we have, below me on the screen is Dorcas. She is one of our writers. She's in training right now, so she attended this to kind of see what the speak writing process was about. And then over on my left-hand side is my right-hand woman, Maureen. She is in charge of all of our scheduling here at Speak Your Own Book, and she is a phenomenal person. She makes sure that our writers get where they need to go, our authors get to where they need to go, and I get to where I need to go literally every day. And she also helps run a lot of our other social entrepreneurships as well. But she had this kind of question rattling around in her mind, and she sent me a text, so just watch what happens.
Definitely get back to you on that as well.
So speaking of names, Maureen actually came up with a really good question that she just texted me. So I want to make sure I give her credit for coming up with this. This is a good question. She says that you met your husband at the same time, or around the same time that you met Phyllis.
Okay, so I actually met my husband on a Facebook, I'm looking at him right now.
Oh, is that why you're giggling like you're so incredibly in love?
So it's a Facebook pagan dating group.
Mm-hmm. All right, so to find out the rest of that story, you'll have to purchase her book. But basically follow us on Speak Your Own Book, because that book will be coming out hopefully later this year, maybe early next year, but I think it will be sometime this winter. Now, Maureen had caught on to the fact that Lori had mentioned that at the same time she had met Phyllis Curate, Curate, I think is how it's pronounced. Anyway, back to the story. She also met her husband at the same time, her future husband at the same time. And she has this really cute little story about how she met him and then ran off to her next adventure while leaving him to, like, after she had married him, leaving him to like run the house for a little bit. And so there's a very cute story in there, and it goes off into this like really cool conversation about something very personal going on in her life while there was this huge change going on in her career as well, and moving into this press secretary position. So that's definitely worth checking out. Let's move on though.
Definitely.
And we'll talk about our speak writing session. Now it's our turn. So going back to our helpful person, our author in the YouTube group. It's talking about, I have in here some instructions about first introductions and growing a relationship and enhancing a relationship that's gone stale. If I were to kind of talk about that, I might start off with something like, let me go back to our thing here, purpose of invocation. So our first purpose of invocation is getting closer to deity. And then I might add in something like, You'll want to grow a relationship with a deity, or if you don't have one or it's gotten stale, enhance that relationship. And let's talk about a few ways you can do that, and then go on into those separate points of discussion. So you're literally just giving that information, you're feeding it verbally into the microphone, and it's recording for you. And that's basically how you speak write a book. You just talk it out. So great ideas from the chat. Anything else that you wanted to include with that first idea of purpose and enhancing the relationship or growing a relationship with the deity? Keywords that you want to include, vocabulary? We'll take just a few seconds to hopefully get an answer on that. There we go. Okay, so this is very good point. Excellent point. So if you're going down the moon, it shouldn't be your first time introducing yourself to that deity. This should be something about reconnecting with or connecting with a deity you already have a strong relationship with, or you're rebuilding that relationship. So excellent point that this is not something you want to start out fresh with a new deity you haven't worked with before. So great point, and it's about deepening a connection. All great points to include in your book. So just start saying that out loud. It's about having a deeper connection with a deity you already have a good working spiritual relationship with. All right. And here's another point. You might want to jump into the next part. You need to learn to become a vessel for this deity you have this solid personal relationship with. And then maybe go into a few details about your own experience becoming a vessel for a deity. Maybe your first time doing it. It's a great point to include a personal anecdote. What it was like to have that deep first connection, or that deeper first connection with deity than what you had experienced before. Excellent job speak writing that. You can also, Frith here gives some ideas about meditation, shadow work, and the ego that should be included with that as examples. So all of those, just start speaking them out loud. Now, after you speak out loud, you need to get your speak writing session transcribed. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that. First off, scribes were these recorders from the ancient speak writers. So you had a speak writer, a storyteller, whether it was a noble king or maybe a bard, or it could be like Aesop randomly telling a story in ancient Greece, and someone overhears it, and then it gets retold and retold and retold until someone writes it down. But eventually someone writes it down, and this is so that it can be preserved as close to the author's original voice as possible, as well as being able to send that information out to others. So let's talk about some equipment you can use with transcription. You do not need a foot pedal, but it's a great thing to have. It's a nice bonus. But if you don't have a foot pedal, you can use hotkeys. There's ways to do that. Get free transcription software. You don't have to pay for it. There's a free version from Express Scribe, a demo version. If you decide that this is now going to be your thing, you'll be an authorpreneur now. And the term authorpreneur means that you are creating books to build a sustainable income for you so that you can do this for a living. Then you might want to invest in some more transcription software. Another great investment is just hire a transcriber to do it for you, because it can be a daunting first task for someone, especially if you're not a good typist. And you don't have to be a good writer, but typing fast is really helpful. Also, some decent headphones so you can hear your voice back very clearly. And I don't mean super expensive. I mean, maybe 20 bucks on a headphone would work. So let's talk about the basics of transcription. When you get your audio done, you're going to load it to the transcription player. Don't use music or VLC or some kind of movie player on your computer. You need some transcription software so that you can slow down, rewind, fast forward, stop, pause, whatever, while you're typing. Then you'll also want to open a Google Doc or an MS Word doc. We prefer Google Docs with Speak Your Own Book so that we can work as a team on, right now we have people on 4 different continents. So it's helpful to when everybody can just jump in on their own time. And then you'll want to set up your hotkeys or your foot pedal. Express Scribe has videos on how to do that. It's very simple to do. Then you'll slow down that audio, hit play, and type what you hear. As you type, you can eliminate some filler information, follow the instructions you gave yourself for formatting and organization. And when you finish, this is also really important. Re-listen to the whole recording. You can speed it up a little and check your manuscript for audio errors. This is mishears. These are mishears, inaudible parts, parts with bad audio, anything like that that you might need to go back over and check again. Now, here's some pro tips for how to do transcription. You'll use a foot pedal if you're a pro. Use autocorrect shortcuts. There's a whole video on how to do this. This is a feature in Microsoft Word that is really good. I think it's possible with a text expander on Google Docs as well. But basically, you can type in like BC, hit enter, and it'll spread it out to because. Or if you want to put laughter or the word laughter, you can put LOL, and then it will turn into the word laughter. There's lots of things that you can do with that. Listen on a slower speed while you're typing and a higher speed while proofing to audio. Edit as you go, but minimally, because you don't want to get bogged down in editing right now. There's time for that in the next step. If you're unsure what was said, mark it as inaudible, put the timestamp. You want to put the hour if it's into hours, minutes, and seconds for sure. And that way you can go back and review it again more easily. If you're not sure how to rephrase something that you said well, leave it as is for now. You can work on it again in revision. So let's go on to that revising part. Now, revising is the process of rereading a text and making changes in content, organization, sentence structures, and word choice to improve it. And I got a text from her. Oh, awesome. All right. I hear that someone really likes this because it's cutting edge. That's great. All right. So let's talk about revising and why it's different from editing. Revising, let me use some, these are tools from when I was teaching at the elementary level, but they're just as applicable at an adult level of writing. Revising is adding words, removing words, moving words around, changing the words out, trading them for better words. That's different from editing because editing is all about the solid rules. What needs to be capitalized, what verb form needs to be used with that noun, what punctuation and what spelling need to be used. Those are set rules. Revision is a little different. There's no real one right answer with revision. There's just, this sounds good, this sounds better. Right. So focus on revising first, get your word choice and the word order down that you want, and then come back to edit. So let's talk about how to do speak revising. First off, you're going to read it out loud. You'll get that transcript back, whether you sent it off to an actual transcriber or you did it yourself or you did it with us and we have it. But when you're revising, this is what we do in all of our revising sessions. We read it out loud. We don't just read silently as we do it. Remember, we're storytelling here. We want to make sure it sounds good out loud. And the best thing to do is read it out loud to a group, if possible. You want other people to hear it so that they can give you feedback on something that sounds confusing. Have some kind of buddy. You know, if you can't yet afford to do actual get actual writing coaching, that's okay. But have someone who you can have listen to your work. Now, here's a revising pro tip. Get a pro. With this part, it is by far the most difficult part of the process. And if you're really struggling with it and you do have a little bit of a budget to spend, revising is a great place to spend that budget. So you can obviously hire one at speakyourownbook.com. If you're not ready for that step of authorpreneurship, that's okay, because you can also talk to an English teacher friend that you have, your friend at the newspaper who does editing, or an English or lit major looking to make some quick cash. I recommend, though, if you hire someone to do it, or even just ask a friend to do it, give them a portion of your profits at the end. Let them write in on the contract or something for like 10% of the profit, something like that, just so that they have a stake in it too, and that they know that hopefully it's going to be a big success and they'll make some money out of it too, even if they can't make any money right now. So let's look at an example of speak writing. Now you'll see that this one's really pretty clean as it is. This is a transcript that we got back from Reverend RG's book. And this is literally pretty much word for word what he said, just cleaned up slightly by our transcribers. Our transcribers are really good at their job, so this is pretty close to what we need, but I went back in and I did a little bit more. Here's the after. So we took his basic frame, but there were some things that were repeated in it, or that he meant to say something slightly different and didn't quite phrase it the way he wanted to. So what I did was go back, I went back and I read it out loud. And I said, okay, well, this part makes better sense here. I'm going to move this around to here. And then when I read it out loud, I started seeing the flow to it. This took me about 5 or 10 minutes to edit, and this is what came out of it. So, you know, that's pretty quick as far as editing and revising, because normally if you get someone who doesn't know how to write a book and they sit down and write it out without having experience writing, you're going to get back a much rougher draft than with speak writing. All right, so you've got your book revised. Now what? It's time for editing. We got to clean it up here. Now with editing, you're going to check for capitalization, word uses, punctuation, and spelling. Just like our chart before said, it's the cups, right? We went from arms to cups. So on cups, you want to check all of these things. And if you're not sure how to use these things correctly, check out grammarly.com. You can type in the particular thing you're struggling with. If you're not sure about, just type that in and it will pop up with some explanations, maybe even some videos to help you out. All right, so here's another editing pro tip, same as before, get a pro. Now, the great thing about this is that if you have someone who's revising, they can probably already do your editing too. So biggest suggestion there, spend your money on this part of it, the revising, the editing, the proofreading. Of course, again, you can hire one, your friend can do it, or a lit major, a student from college can do it. But going on to proofreading now, what does proofreading mean? We've already gone through it twice. Why do we need to go through it again? Well, to get it ready for publishing. It's one final check of your manuscript, line by line. You're also looking at overall layout, theme, sections and pieces that should be included but haven't yet, like your table of content, your appendices, your forwards, dedications and acknowledgements, introductions, and any graphics you want to include with it. You also want to do an accuracy check. Make sure that the information you're sourcing from is good information, that any web links you included in your book still work, that you have the correct quotes if you pulled quotes from somebody else, that is word for word exactly what they said, and that you're using correct data if you're pulling statistics. All of this is very important because it is the internet that you're putting this out there on. Eventually it will be available for public release. There's going to be someone that will have the free time to check over that book and pinpoint everything wrong with it. So try to make sure as much as possible that you get it as accurate as possible. All right, so let's move on to our proofreading pro tip. Same as before, get a pro. The great thing about this is that Speak Your Own Book can do all three of these things at once. They can do revising, editing, and proofreading for you so that when you get it back, it is completely ready for publishing. All you had to do was sit in there and listen to it, and then someone else could transcribe it. Someone else could do the hard part. So let's move on to the fun part, which is publishing. Before you can actually publish, you need to do a few things. The first thing you need to do is make your book cover. Now, book covers are really important. That whole saying, don't judge a book by its cover, everyone judges a book by its cover. This book would not be selling as well to children if it was in, you know, dull, boring colors and didn't have something fun and cute on there. It would not be as attractive to them. And so make sure that your book is going to look pretty. Now, I strongly recommend spending money here too. You want a professional to do this because this is what's going to sell your book initially. Someone's going to see your book along with other options. You want to make sure your book stands out. Also, the next thing you'll do is choose a publishing method. You can self-publish, and I do recommend self-publishing because it's just one, easier to do, and in the long term it's more profitable. I'll show you why. You can publish through Amazon, But remember that this will take large royalties from you. They do have a huge customer base, which makes up for it, though. You're going to get a lot more exposure for your book if it's on Amazon than if you're only publishing it through your Instagram, your Twitter, and your website. Lulu is another great self-publishing company. You can do print on demand, and it's really cheap to print through them, but you're going to be doing all the self-promotion yourself. It's going to be in a store that most people aren't going to look at to purchase books. When people go to buy books, they go to Amazon, not Lulu. Brave New Books is another great one. They are Dutch based, but if you're planning on printing your book in Europe, it's great to go with someone who is based in Europe. So this is another great company to use. I recommend publishing through all three. This one is published through all three places. So we can send this anywhere in the world, and we have it on Amazon as well. So this is something that I recommend. Do all three. Now, you can also choose a book format. You can do PDF, and you can sell it through your website as a PDF or through your social media. You can do an EPUB through Kindle or a Mobi or something like that. You can also do Kindle direct publishing. This is where they pull your book and they send it to a printer themselves. It does cost a little bit more money than going through Lulu or something like that. And you can also do print. Now, print on demand versus bulk order, let's talk a little bit about that. When you do print on demand, you don't purchase the book until someone buys your book. And then you go into Lulu or Brave and you send it out to whoever it's supposed to go to. This is great because you don't put a lot of money up front. Now, long term, it is cheaper to purchase by bulk and have all of those books purchased at once, but only if you plan on selling all of those books. If you're not sure that you're going to have the following yet to sell a bunch of books, go with print on demand. Yep, I see a warning here for 15 minutes, so let's just go ahead and we'll talk about book covers. Here's why I recommend book covers. The one on the left we did help with, but it was not one that was created by a cover designer. The writer for it, she didn't have a huge budget for the cover part, so as a friend I helped her out with it, and she had her sister do the cover art. The cover art's adorable, but there could be a lot more done with the rest of the book, right? Over here on the right, you have two of our book covers that were created in-house by our Speak Your Own Book cover designer, Kat, from Nairobi, and she did amazing work here. She charges roughly $250, $300, depends on the complexity of your book, but she is an excellent resource, and we're happy to connect you with her if you're looking for someone. All right, so quickly we're going to go through marketing, selling, and get you a few tips to get that book sold. You need to start building your readership today. Go onto social media, make yourself an author's social media account on all the major ones. In particular, I recommend using Twitter, in Instagram, and TikTok. Make little videos of yourself using your book or reading your book out loud or parts of your book or talking about other people's books, but get on there and make your social media and post today. So here's how you build your following. First, post daily or at least weekly. I post daily to our social medias on Speak Your Own Book. Usually it's me posting it, although sometimes our writers jump in and help too. And even if I don't have much to post, I try to post something every day. Use good hashtags. I use displaypurposes.com, and you can check Speak Your Own Book's Instagram, and you can see that we have like a list of hashtags at the end of our most of our posts. Those all came from displaypurposes.com. I put in the one major hashtag I want. It gives me a whole bunch of related ones that are very helpful to put with it. Use good photos. This is something I still struggle with Speak Your Own Book. I'm not a professional photographer, but if you can, use better lighting, use better props, stage your photos well, think about all of those things. Another great thing to do, follow other authors on Instagram and social media, like and comment their things, and then follow other potential readers too. Search for hashtags related to your topic. All right, Lawrence, do you need something?
No, I got a request to unmute.
Sure.
We should wrap up in about 5-6 minutes.
All right, I have like 3 slides left, I think, and then we're done. All right, so let's talk about things that you could post. I post book and product reviews, not just of our products and our books, but also of other authors and other friends. I post quotes on there about writing and reading and anything to do with the subject matter of our books. You can post quotes from yourself. You can post quotes from your own book, other people that you admire. Put product photos of the products that you use with the book you're talking about. If it's candle magic, post your candles. If it's crystals, post your crystals. And make video demos of your techniques that you talk about in your book. And then do video read alouds as your book starts becoming completed. You don't have to wait till your book is finished. Grab those manuscripts as soon as they get back and start reading them out loud. And then also post some tips and tricks to help your readers, as well as your opinions. Those are also very important. And give good advice if you have people asking for advice on your following. Also, cross promote with other people. We are happy to cross promote with anyone. If you're publishing a book, we'll put it on ours. And in return, you can throw one of ours up on yours. We are happy to cross promote for people. We only do cross promotions for free, though. We don't charge for that, and we don't pay for it from anyone else. It's completely making content across. All right, other marketing methods, our last thing for today. You can go on to podcasts. You can cross promote with sponsorships with other authors, content creators, and organizations. We recommend working with the Correllian Tradition, Magic TV, Pagans Tonight, all very helpful. And any of our authors are also willing to share and trade information and help promote. Also, go to these pagan pride events, just like where I'm at today. These are great places to get your products out there and get word out. You can go to temple, shrine, and coven events, smaller group events, and you can do other events like Renaissance festivals and things like that. And conventions are also great as well as hosting your own seminars and workshops. And I recommend this welcome email marketing series. Google it. There's a lot of information on it that I won't get into today, but everyone should have a welcome email marketing series. All right, let's quickly run through the sales techniques. You can add promo codes, weekend discounts, Sabbath sales, full moon specials, birthday discounts, book signing events, author go lives, and author read alouds with discounts at the end, or that are only available during your live. And of course, we have some additional resources here. Now, I would like to go ahead and take some questions for the audience if we have time. So I'm going to wrap up here. Check out these free resources that we have. And any questions from the audience, Lawrence?
I don't see any. I'm looking on YouTube again. Nothing right now. This
Okay.
was jam-packed with information.
It was.
Could have easily gone another 90 minutes, 3 hours.
Absolutely. There's so much information with writing your own book and speak writing especially. But if you have any questions, I know there's a lot of information here today. You can always reach out and email me. I am happy to assist you with anything. Again, my email is christycopeland@gmail.com. I want to make sure that everybody can publish their book. Hopefully we can help along the way with that. But if not, if you're for some reason you're not able to use our services, then we'll definitely be rooting for you and sharing your book.
Awesome. Thank you
If
so much.
possible, I would like to just say one thing.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, honey. Hi, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. Chris and her team are so much fun to work with. It is amazing what comes out of 1 hour of just hanging out and talking. It's amazing. They make it so simple. So simple. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Lori. Yeah, it's been so much fun working with all of our authors. We have some really great people that we're working with, and we're always welcome to work with any author. So if you're looking to make your own book, you know, we try to make this very affordable for people. So please reach out. We're happy to help with anything you need.
I think we've got one question, and then we'll need to wrap.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Frith. I've kept journals since I was a kid. Do you have any specific advice for how you might start working to convert those to an autobiography?
I've done that before, actually. I had an author who contacted me because she found her mother's old journals from when she took a trip through Europe. And actually, through helping her publish that book, it inspired me on my own European journey as well, because of all the crazy stories her mom told her, told in the book or in the journals about it. Yeah, get those transcribed. Just have someone sit down and type them. You can type them out yourself, and I might even publish them. Like the way she did hers was she published it as is, just as a journal from this girl traveling around Europe back in the 1950s at 19, 20 years old.
Okay, great. That's a big job, but thank you.
It is. It takes a lot of work. It took about 3 months to work on that, but it was worth the effort. She made a great book out of it. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and so many great stories, which we're hoping to read. Please send over the links. We'll put them with the YouTube channel, so as people rewatch, they can go to the websites.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, please support our authors. They work really hard on their books. And, we're always here to just promote our authors. We get paid on our end regardless, but, we want to make sure they become successful with their books too. So yeah, definitely support them. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Please email me if you have questions. Bye. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Thank you.
Thank you.